Weeks passed, and Henry continued to live his life with the £1 million banknote as his companion. He never spent it, but its presence opened doors and allowed him to experience the world in ways he had never imagined. Then, one day, as he was walking through the city, he encountered the two brothers who had given him the banknote. "Well, Mr. Adams," one of the brothers said with a smile, "it seems our little experiment has been a success." Henry handed the banknote back to them, his heart lighter than it had been in months. "It has indeed. But more than that, it has taught me a great deal about myself." The brothers nodded in approval. "We're glad to hear that. And as a reward for your honesty and integrity, we have decided to give you a smaller, but no less significant gift." They handed Henry a check for £50,000, the same amount Mr. Lloyd had offered him. "Consider this a token of our appreciation for your remarkable journey." Henry was speechless, his eyes filling with tears of gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. As the brothers walked away, Henry realized that he had been given not just wealth, but something far more valuable. The knowledge that true fortune lies not in money, but in the choices we make and the character we build along the way. Henry's decision to stay true to his principles ultimately led to an even greater reward, both materially and morally. His story is a testament to the idea that integrity and self-respect are worth more than any amount of money. When I was 25 years old, I worked in an office in San Francisco. I did my job well, and my future was promising. I was alone in the world, and I was happy. On Saturday afternoons, I didn't work. I sailed my little sailboat on San Francisco Bay. One Saturday afternoon, I sailed out too far. The strong afternoon wind pushed my sailboat out of the bay and into the Pacific Ocean. That night, when I had lost all hope, a small British brig saw me and took me on board. The brig was sailing to London. The voyage was long and stormy. I worked as a sailor to pay for my trip. When I arrived in London, my clothes were old and dirty. I had only $1 in my pocket. With this dollar, I ate and slept for the first 24 hours. During the next 24 hours, I didn't eat and I didn't sleep. At about 10 o'clock the following morning, I went to Portland Place. I saw a child walking past holding a big pear. The child ate one small piece and then threw the pear onto the street. I stopped and looked at it. I was very hungry, and I really wanted that pear, but every time I tried to get it, someone passed by and looked at me. I quickly turned in the other direction and waited for the person to pass by. I tried again and again to get that pear, but the same thing happened. I was desperate. I decided to get the pear and not to worry about the people who saw me. At that moment, a gentleman opened a window behind me and said, "Come in here, please." A well-dressed servant opened the door. He took me to a beautiful room where two old gentlemen were sitting and discussing something important. Their breakfast was still on the table. I was very hungry, and I stared at their breakfast. I want to tell the reader that the two gentlemen had made a bet several days before. I knew nothing about the bet until later. Let me tell you what happened. The two old gentlemen were brothers. For several days, they argued about a very strange subject. They decided to end their argument with a bet, as the English usually do. The following was the subject of the bet. The Bank of England issued 2 banknotes of £1,000,000 each for a public transaction with a foreign country. England used 1 banknote, and the other remained in the bank. At this point, Brother A said to Brother B, "If an honest and intelligent stranger arrives in London without a friend and without money, except for the £1,000,000 banknote, he will starve to death." Brother B answered, "No, I don't agree." Brother A said, "If he goes to the bank or anywhere else to change this big note, the police will put him in prison. Everyone will think he stole it." They continued arguing for days until Brother B said, "I'll bet £30,000 that the stranger will live for 30 days with the banknote, no prison." Brother A accepted the bet. He went to the bank and bought the £1,000,000 banknote. After he returned home, he prepared a letter. Then the two brothers sat by the window and waited for the right man for the bet. They saw a lot of honest faces go by, but they were not intelligent enough. Several faces were intelligent, but they were not honest. A lot of faces were honest and intelligent, but they were not poor enough. Other faces were honest, intelligent, and poor, but they were not strangers. When they saw me from the window, they thought I was the right man. They asked me questions, and soon they knew my story. Finally, they told me I was the right man for the bet. I asked them to explain the bet. One of the gentlemen gave me an envelope. I wanted to open it, but he said, "No, don't." I was confused, and I wanted to discuss the subject with them, but they didn't. I felt hurt because I was the subject of a joke. When I left their house, I looked for the pair on the street. It was gone. I was quite angry with those two gentlemen. Far from their house, I opened the envelope. I saw that there was money inside. I didn't stop to read their letter. I ran to the nearest eating place. I ate and ate and ate. At last, I took out the envelope with the money to pay for my meal. I looked at the banknote and almost fainted. It was a banknote worth $5,000,000. I was speechless. I stared at the banknote. The two gentlemen had made a big mistake. They probably wanted to give me a £1 banknote. I saw the owner of the eating place staring at the banknote too. We were both surprised. I did not know what to do or say, so I simply gave him the note and said, "Give me the change, please." The owner apologized 1,000 times. "I'm very sorry, but I can't change this banknote, sir." "I don't have any other money. Please change this note," I said. The owner then said, "You can pay for this food whenever you want, sir. I understand that you are a very rich gentleman. You like playing jokes on people by dressing like a poor man. You can come here and eat all you want whenever you want. You can pay me when you want." When I left the eating place, I hurried to the house of the two gentlemen. I wanted to correct the mistake they had made. I was very nervous when I arrived. The same servant opened the door. I asked for the two gentlemen. "They are gone," the servant said. "Gone? Gone where?" "Oh, on a journey. But where did they go? To the continent, I think. The continent? Yes, sir. When will they return? In a month. A month? Oh, this is awful. How can I talk to them? It's extremely important. I can't help you. I don't know where they are, sir. Then I must see a member of the family. All the family are away. They're in Egypt and India, I think. Before leaving, the two gentlemen made an enormous mistake. They will certainly return home tonight. Tell them that I came here to correct the mistake. I'll return tomorrow. I'll tell them if I see them, but I won't see them, sir. You must not worry because everything is all right. They will be here on time, and they will see you then. Goodbye. I was confused. My head was in a fog. I did not understand what the servant told me. The letter. I remembered the letter. This is what it said. You are an intelligent and honest man. You are also poor and a stranger. In this envelope, you will find some money. It is yours only for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, return to this house. I have a bet on you. If I win this bet, you can have any job with any salary that you want. There were no signature, no address, no date on the letter. How strange. I didn't know what to think. I went to a park, sat down, and thought about what to do. After an hour, I reached the decision that follows. The two old gentlemen are playing a game that I don't understand. They are betting on me, but at that time I didn't know anything about the details of the bet. If I go to the Bank of England to return the banknote, the bank will ask me lots of questions. If I tell the truth, no one will believe me. They will put me in an asylum. If I tell a lie, the police will put me in prison. I can't even give it to anyone because no honest person will want it. I can do only one thing. I must keep the bill for a whole month, and I must not lose it. If I help the old man to win his bet, he'll give me the job I want. The idea of an important job with a big salary made me happy. With this exciting idea in mind, I began walking down the streets of London. Every time I passed in front of a tailor's, I wanted to enter and buy some new clothes, but I had no money to pay for them. The £1 million banknote in my pocket was useless. I passed in front of the same tailor's 6 times. At last, I entered. I quietly asked if they had an old, unattractive suit that no one wanted to buy. The man I spoke to nodded his head, but he didn't speak. Then another man looked at me and nodded his head. I went to him, and he said, "One moment, please." After some time, he took me to a back room. He looked at several ugly suits that no one wanted. He chose the worst for me. I really wanted a suit, so I said nothing. It was time to pay. "Can you wait a few days for the money? I haven't got any small change with me." The man said, "Oh, you haven't? Well, I thought gentlemen like you carried large change." "My friend," I replied, "you can't judge a stranger by the clothes he wears. I can pay for this suit, but can you change a large banknote?" "Oh, of course, we can change a large banknote," he said coldly. I gave him the banknote. He received it with a smile, a big smile that covered his face. When he read the banknote, his smile disappeared. The owner of the shop came over. He had a bad expression on his face. I realized the men thought I had stolen the banknote. The owner said, "Oh, this is strange. My boy, why didn't you tell us you were so rich? My assistant here is stupid, but he means no harm. Please tell me, how can I help you?" "Well," I replied, "I really don't need any new clothes now." Then I told him how I really needed some clothes for a few days, and after that, I didn't care what happened to me. "You can have anything you want, sir. Send for it whenever you want." I chose an expensive suit and asked them to send the bill to my address as soon as possible. When I left the shop, I was quite satisfied with what I had done. As I walked down the street, I was thinking about buying all kinds of luxuries. Then I thought, what if the Bank of England stops payment on the note before the end of the month? Immediately, I entered the nearest eating place. When the waiter brought me the bill, I told him I forgot my wallet. The man said, "Let me show you something very curious. I've got a £1 million banknote." I was surprised when I saw him take it out of his pocket and give it to me. The note was worn, dirty, and wrinkled. It was hard to believe that it was real. But the waiter told me that the restaurant's owner, Mr. Quinn, had it. It was given to him many years ago by a rich man. I examined the note carefully, but I couldn't find anything unusual about it. It was old and dirty, but it was still a £1 million banknote. When I looked at Mr. Quinn, I saw that he was watching me very carefully. Then I realized what he wanted. He was hoping that I would say, "This is no good. You must take it to the Bank of England." I knew that he didn't have any reason to doubt the note, but he couldn't help it. He couldn't trust his eyes. I realized he was anxious to see how I would behave, so I said, "Mr. Quinn, this note is not good. It's a counterfeit." He was surprised. I could see he was disappointed, but he quickly got over it. He said, "Sir, you are joking. The Bank of England never gives counterfeit notes." I replied, "No, Mr. Quinn, I'm not joking. It's my opinion that this note is a counterfeit." "Nonsense," he said. "You are wrong." "Very well," I said. "Let me take this note to the Bank of England and examine it more closely." When I left the shop, I had a new problem to think about. I began to feel afraid of losing the banknote. I didn't have a home or a safe place to hide it. Even if I did have a safe place, I would have been afraid that someone would steal it. I finally decided to hide the note in my sock. It was not comfortable, but it was safe. I walked along the streets in a state of confusion. I didn't know what to do. I was so lost in thought that I forgot where I was going. I didn't know where I was until I saw the Tower of London. I looked around and realized I was in the part of the city where only poor people lived. I felt like a fool. This is no place for me, I thought. I must go back to where the rich people are. When I reached the area where rich people lived, I began to feel at home again. I felt rich, important, and proud. I entered a fine restaurant and ordered a big dinner. When I was eating, I noticed that some men and women were watching me. I knew that they were admiring my clothes and my manner. One of the men who was watching me came up to my table and asked me to sit with him and his friends. I agreed and joined them. They were all very rich people. One of the men was a duke, and one of the women was a duchess. The duke asked me many questions about myself. I told them about my adventures in San Francisco and about my experiences with the £1 million banknote. They were all very interested and asked to see the note. I showed it to them, and they were amazed. The Duke said, "My dear sir, this is the most incredible thing I have ever heard. You must come and stay with me at my home. I want you to tell my friends about your adventures." I accepted his invitation, and soon I was living in luxury. I had a beautiful room, servants to wait on me, and everything I wanted. The Duke was very kind to me, and we became good friends. He introduced me to many important people, and soon I was known everywhere as the man with the £1 million banknote. Everyone wanted to meet me, and I was invited to all the best parties. As the days passed, I became more and more comfortable with my new life. "You have become very famous. Everyone in London is talking about you and your banknote. You must write a book about your experiences." I thought it was a good idea, so I began to write my story. I wrote about my life in San Francisco, my adventures with the banknote, and my new life in London. The book was a great success, and I became even more famous. I received many offers of marriage, but I was not interested in getting married. I was happy with my life, and I didn't want to change anything. Henry returned to his lavish hotel room, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on his mind. He paced back and forth, considering the pros and cons. The £50,000 offered by Mr. Lloyd was a fortune, a sum that could guarantee him a comfortable life without the uncertainties that came with the £1 million banknote. But there were risks involved. What if Mr. Lloyd and his associates were not as trustworthy as they seemed? If the banknote fell into the wrong hands, the consequences could be dire, not just for Henry, but possibly for the entire financial system. Moreover, there was a nagging feeling deep inside Henry that the banknote had brought him something more valuable than wealth. It had given him confidence, experiences, and a sense of self-worth that he had never known before. As he sat by the window, watching the bustling London streets below, Henry realized that the banknote had become a part of his identity. Without it, he feared he might return to the ordinary life he once led, devoid of excitement and adventure. But could he really hold on to it forever? What would happen when the brothers returned to collect it? They might be amused by his journey, but they might also be displeased if they found out he had tried to profit from their experiment. After much deliberation, Henry made up his mind. The next morning, he met Mr. Lloyd at a discreet location in the city, his heart pounding with anticipation. "I've made my decision," Henry said firmly. "I appreciate your offer, but I cannot sell the banknote. It doesn't belong to me, and I believe it would be wrong to part with it for profit." Mr. Lloyd raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Henry's resolve. "Are you certain, Mr. Adams? This is a rare opportunity." "I am certain," Henry replied. The banknote has changed my life, but it also comes with responsibilities. I cannot betray the trust that was placed in me, even if it means missing out on a fortune." Mr. Lloyd regarded Henry with a mixture of respect and disappointment. "Very well, Mr. Adams. I wish you the best of luck. But do remember, opportunities like this don't come around often." With that, Mr. Lloyd turned and walked away, leaving Henry alone with his thoughts. Despite the uncertainty of his future, Henry felt a sense of relief and pride in his decision. He had chosen integrity over greed, and in doing so, he had proven to himself that he was more than just a man with a £1,000,000 banknote. He was a man of principle.